Okay, so you're here because, let's be honest, we all want to kind of get to the point with this stuff, right? Like the stuff that really matters.
Yeah.
And so today we're diving into a book that I think is going to really resonate with you guys. It's Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting about this book is it's not really about, like picking stocks or bonds or anything like that.
Absolutely not at all.
It's really about the psychology. It's about like the emotions.
Right, like why do we make the decisions we do with money, right?
Exactly. And so Housel's, he actually makes a really compelling argument that it's not always about being like a math whiz.
Oh, I'm so relieved to hear that.
Right.
I am not a math whiz.
Yeah, me neither. But he says, it's more about managing your behavior, like how you think and react to money. And that's often way more important than like any kind of fancy formula.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the thing that he really hits on that's so important is that everyone's relationship with money is just so different.
Oh, absolutely. Like you think about it, someone who grew up, during a recession or like a time of real economic hardship, their view of money and risk is going to be totally different than someone who maybe, didn't experience that.
For sure. And, even within families, you see this, right? Like siblings who have completely different approaches to money.
Oh, totally. And it all comes back to, like you said, their own personal journey, their own experiences.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, what we really want to do is pull out some of those key principles from Housel's work that can help all of us, make those smarter decisions.
Less emotional decisions, too.
Oh, yeah. Less driven by that kind of gut reaction or, that fear that we sometimes have. And one of the things that he talks about that I thought was so interesting is this idea that money is almost like a soft skill, not like a hard science.
Yes.
What do you think he means by that? Like, what does that even mean?
I think what he's getting at is that, we often think about finances as, very black and white numbers driven. But in reality, so much of it comes down to like mastering those emotions, like fear and greed, understanding your own biases. And it's funny because when you think about it that way, it becomes a lot less about like, crunching numbers and a lot more about kind of knowing yourself.
Right. And how do you even begin to do that? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, one of the things that Housel suggests is to really think about your own upbringing. Like, was money something that caused anxiety in your family? Or was it something that was, very free-flowing? Like, did your parents talk about it openly? All those early experiences, they really shape the way we view money, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah, and I think acknowledging that is huge because it kind of explains maybe why you react the way you do in certain financial situations.
Absolutely. And once you start to recognize those patterns, you can start to challenge them. You can start to ask yourself, is this really the bold decision for me? Or is this just, my past kind of talking?
Yeah, I love that. And, speaking of things that are really powerful over time, Housel talks a lot about compounding. And this is something that I think a lot of us have heard about, but it's hard to really wrap your head around sometimes.
Compounding is honestly one of the most amazing concepts in finance, but it does require something that many of us struggle with.
Patience.
Yes, so much patience, right? Because it's not about, getting rich quick. It's about these small, consistent contributions over time and the way they just kind of snowball.
I know. It's like, it almost seems magical.
It really does. And one of the things that I think Housel does a really good job of explaining is that it's not about trying to time the market perfectly.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to predict, the highs and lows.
Right, exactly. So it's much more effective to just be consistently invested to, ride out those fluctuations and let time do its thing.
Okay, so we've got, our own psychology that we have to be aware of. And then we've got this incredible power of compounding over time. But then Housel throws another wrench in the works, which is the role of luck and risk.
Oh, yes. And this one is so important because it really challenges the way we often think about success and failure.
So like how so?
Well, we tend to want to take all the credit when things go well.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, I'm a genius. I made all the right moves. But then when things go bad, it's like, oh, it was just bad luck or, the market was against me.
Right. It was totally out of my control.
Exactly. And Housel's point is that it's rarely that black and white. There's always an element of luck, both good and bad. And it's actually really important to acknowledge that.
So it's like a little bit of humility goes a long way.
Exactly. Like, recognizing that sometimes things just go your way and sometimes they don't. And it's not always a reflection of your skill or your decision making.
Yeah. And I think that can be really freeing in a way because it takes some of the pressure off.
Oh, absolutely. And it also helps you stay grounded because you're not getting too high on the wins or too low on the losses.
Right. And, speaking of things that I think people often get confused, one of the things that really stuck with me from Housel's book was the difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Yes. And this is a distinction that so many people miss.
Okay, so break it down for us. Like, how are those two things different?
Okay, so think of it this way. Being rich is often about what you can see. It's the fancy car, the big house, the designer clothes. It's that kind of outward display of wealth. But wealth is actually about what you don't see.
It's the stuff that's happening behind the scene.
Exactly. It's your savings, your investments, the assets that are quietly growing and giving you security and options for the future.
So it's like one is about show and the other one is about substance.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. And Housel emphasizes that, building true wealth isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much you save.
And how consistently you're saving.
Yes, consistency is key. And this ties into another really important concept that Housel talks about, which is the idea of enough.
Oh, yeah. This one was big for me because it's almost like countercultural, right? Like,
yeah,
our society is constantly telling us that we need more.
It's this never-ending cycle of wanting the next best thing, the bigger house, the fancier car. But what Housel is saying is that at some point you have to define what enough means for you personally.
It's about figuring out what truly matters to you and what brings you contentment, rather than constantly chasing after what everyone else has.
Exactly, because if you don't define that for yourself, you're always going to be on this hedonic treadmill. You're always going to be striving for more and never quite feeling satisfied.
Right, and you'll never really be able to enjoy what you have.
Exactly, and that kind of leads into another really important point that Housel makes, which is about financial survival.
Okay, so this is about more than just, making money. It's about not losing it.
Yeah, it's about protecting what you've built and avoiding those big financial disasters that can really set you back.
So things like excessive debt or taking on risks that you don't fully understand.
Right. And also not having that kind of financial safety net for unexpected events.
Yeah, because life throws curveballs.
It definitely does. And what's interesting is that Housel actually argues that sometimes the best financial decision is the one that just keeps you in the game.
It's about not getting knocked out completely.
Exactly. And that allows you to weather those storms and stay invested long enough for those long-term growth trends like compounding to really work their magic.
Makes sense. And it's funny because one of the things that can really sabotage our financial well-being is something that we all struggle with, I think, which is our ego.
Oh, yeah. Our desire to impress other people. It's so easy to fall into that trap of spending money on things that we don't really need or even want just because we think it'll make us look good.
Yeah, like keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. And Housel's point is that all that external validation, it doesn't really bring lasting happiness.
In fact, it often just leads to more stress and anxiety, right?
Absolutely, because you're always trying to keep up with this moving target.
Right. And so what he suggests is that we should be focusing more on our own internal sense of financial security and that quiet accumulation of wealth.
Because ultimately, that's what gives you true freedom and peace of mind.
So I think to kind of sum it all up for everyone, the psychology of money is really about recognizing that our own minds and our own emotions can often be our biggest obstacles when it comes to making smart financial decisions.
Yeah, it's about understanding our own biases, knowing when we've had enough, being patient with that whole compounding thing, and always prioritizing financial survival.
And I think what's so powerful about Housel's message is that it's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding ourselves and our relationship with money.
Exactly. And so as you go about your day, maybe just take a moment to reflect on your own financial choices. Think about how your past experiences might be influencing those choices. And maybe consider one small shift you could make that would align more with those principles that we've been talking about.
And that's the deep dive for today.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.